Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of this newsletter is going to be abundance. Why like attracts like. Well, what prompted me to do this particular video was a comment that I saw on one of my videos recently. And the guy brings up a good point. He says the social paradox is that in our world, the poor tend to get poorer and the rich tend to get richer. In other words, if you have girls, you get more girls. If you don't have any, you don't get any. And I'll give you an example. Like, I used to be in the mortgage business years ago, and so one of the first things that we did when a client came to us looking to get a loan for a house is we would do what's called a mortgage pre-qualification. Basically, look at their income docs, their credit report, their trade lines, which are basically credit cards, car loans, basically them borrowing money and paying it back successfully. And so we would look at all those things and pre-qualify a person to determine whether or not they actually qualified for a mortgage. And a thing that's interesting, and you've probably had this, you've probably had friends or people that you know that have been like desperate for money or needed to borrow money at a period of time. And here's the thing, is like people want to offer you money and want to invest in your company, usually when you're not looking for money, when things are going great and things are going well. Because it's not so much that money's attracted to you. What money's really attracted to as far as business goes is money is attracted to money. In other words, places where it can be put so it can get a stable, steady, safe as possible return on investment. And so somebody that's always broke and always looking to borrow money, usually, like especially like when we look at people that have maxed out credit cards and stuff like that, and the more people, when they were closer to maxing out their credit cards, their incidence of having a late payment became significantly higher, and therefore their credit score also dropped the more in debt somebody became. In other words, like if you had a $10,000 credit card, the closer you were to maxing out that credit card, it's like once you reached the 75% threshold, you really got dinged hard in your credit report, and that affected the loan rates that you could actually qualify for. And so the interesting thing about that is like the people that have a hard time getting money, it's usually they've borrowed too much, and so they're really not a safe risk, and that's why it's hard for them to get money. But other people, they have a successful business and everything's going great and they're growing their business organically. When you have a successful business, other people, investors, other just people in general, notice that you have a successful business. And everybody wants to invest in your company. They want to give you money to invest for them, or they want to buy into your company or get a piece of the pie. Because when you have a successful business, anybody that has money knows that successful businesses come from providing a useful product or service. And it's like figuring out the mechanics of any business is usually the hardest thing. I mean, you look at a company like Facebook. I mean, they literally had hundreds of millions of users before they even figured out how to be profitable. And what they really focused on was providing a useful service that people wanted to use. And so they did that, and that's what they focused on. And then they found a way to actually monetize their content and to monetize their traffic. And so, I mean, you look at why do the poor tend to get poorer? Well, when you look at groups of people, groups of human beings, you look at government projects, and they've done studies on this, and they realized when the government would come in and they would do government projects, everybody that lived in that development, they were all on government assistance, all in government housing, usually on Social Security, disability. And so, like, everything they're on is basically a handout. Everything is paid for by the government. And I mean, sometimes people get on hard times, but it's like, think about it. If you live in a community and you're surrounded by hundreds, if not thousands of people who are basically all in the same boat as you are, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to find a job, and you're surrounded by people who can't find a job, who it's almost impossible, and they've pretty much given up, and you say, hey, I'm going to go get a job, and I'm going to get out of here, I'm going to get out of this project, I'm going to get out of this government housing. What usually happens, they're going to laugh at you, put you down, oh, it'll never happen. Well, obviously, if you were so smart, you wouldn't be in a government project getting a handout in the first place, and that's typically what happens. And so as soon as somebody starts striving to better themselves, everybody around them wants to tell them why it'll never work out for them and why they should just throw in the towel and be just like them, because misery tends to love company. But on the flip side, I'll give you an example. Like my parents, when I was a freshman in high school, I went to a public high school. And then that particular school closed, and so the next year they sent me to a Catholic high school, a private school. And it was in a wealthy area, Fort Lauderdale. My parents were working class people. They didn't have a lot of money, and so they were, it was really tight for them to have the money to send my brother and I to a private school. It was one of the really good things that my parents did for us. And so I went from going to a public school and like kids are drawing pot leaves on their folder, their school folders or their books. They're not paying attention in class. I'm taking honors classes and getting a fucking A, like not even thinking about it. I don't even study or have any homework or nothing because everything had been like dumbed down to whatever the slowest or least intelligent person is because we don't want to embarrass anybody. We coddle everybody in our society. And then I go from that, everybody's talking about I can't wait till I turn 16 and I drop out. I go from that environment to a Catholic high school when I'm taking basic classes like my first semester that I got 4 Ds. I went from having honors classes I wasn't even trying in a public school and getting straight A's in them to here I go and I'm getting like 4 Ds in basic classes. And it was a real eye-opener. And so I went from going to school with people who really weren't thinking about a future because their parents weren't focused on it either, to going to a school, a private school, where quite frankly, I went to school with a lot of kids who had rich, wealthy families. And so in public school, they laughed at you when you did well on a test, but you were cool when you did lousy on a test. And there was no talk about going to college or any of that. But the college the high school I ended up going to, you're an idiot if you didn't go to college or have plans to go to college. That's the way people looked at it. You got laughed at for that. And so like when I hung out with these people, it's like they had a different outlook in life. They had parents that were wealthy or they were successful, and hanging out with them, getting to know them. Basically, I made the distinction when I think I was a sophomore in high school that these people ain't any smarter than I am. And I could eventually someday be just as successful, if not more successful than them. And I developed that belief. And so I sought about ways to learn strategies that I need to learn in order to make money, to grow a business, to grow my career, the kinds of things to learn the skills that I needed to learn in order to get compensated very well for what I did for a living. And so when you look at somebody that's in the projects versus somebody that comes from a wealthy family, what happens is a wealthier family, they look at the world differently. It's not that money buys you happiness, it just simply gives you a lot more choices. And if you've got money, you're able to move around in the world, experience the world, experience other cultures, see what other people are like in other towns, other cities, whether it's in your country or in another country. It's just amazing how things open up for you. And so, the quality of your life is going to be in direct proportion to the quality of the people who you consistently spend your time with. Your quality of your life is also going to be in direct proportion to the expectations of your peer group. And so, the simple question is, like, why the poor get poorer? It's all the people that are living in housing projects that have dreams and goals that they'd like to accomplish. Think about that for a second. Think about the quality, or think about the expectations of the people that are living in those projects. They're obviously not very high. They're not thinking about going to, most of them I should say, aren't thinking about going to college. A lot of them are just trying to survive and put enough food on the table to feed their families. Whereas people growing up in a wealthier, higher socioeconomic neighborhood, they've got more choices. They're going to send their kids to better schools. They're going to get better educated. And so they're gonna learn business skills from their parents. Maybe they take over their parents' family business, or they get inspired enough, and their parents fill their bucket of self-esteem, so to speak, up so high, and teach them the things that they need to know to go out and be successful. They go out and eventually start their own business and focus on providing a really useful product or service that people will buy and pay for, and they become successful themselves. But on the flip side, I also had lots of guys that I went to high school with that had rich parents and came from rich families, and they hardly ever accomplished anything. They barely got 2 nickels to rub together, just because their parents were unable to pass on their gifts, their skills, their talents to their children successfully. In other words, to inspire them to reach their full potential. Most people don't reach their full potential, and so same thing like becoming successful with women. It's like once you start getting dates with women, and like you look over a course of a 7-day week, if you got 3 dates with 3 different women that week, and you see a really cute girl checking you out, you're not going to have any worry or any fear or any doubt of getting rejected because you're really not going to give a fuck. Why? Because when you walk over there and you talk to that girl, so what if she rejects you? You got 3 other dates this week. Whereas if you hadn't had a date in 10 years and then you go to talk to that girl, obviously your internal experience and your internal psychology is going to be a lot different when you're talking to that girl as opposed to having several other women. You just act differently. Your expectations are different. And so that's why I talk about all the time is like thinking from the end. I act like James Bond acts. Do you ever see James Bond having any doubt or any fear that he's going to take the woman to bed or that he's going to get the bad guy and save the world or whatever? Of course not. Why? Because that's what always happens. Things always work out in his favor. In the end, it might be difficult and a motherfucker to get there, but he always wins in the end, and he always tends to get the girl and save the world from imminent peril and danger just because of his expectations. And so your beliefs and your self-talk and the quality of the questions that you consistently ask yourself is going to affect the psychology of how you show up in the world and how you interact with other people. And so if you've got an area of your life that you're not successful in, then go hang out with other people that are really successful in that particular area. Change your peer group. If you're not very successful, but you want to be, or you want to hang out, or you want to become more successful, go hang out with people and make friends with people that are already successful and enjoying the kind of success that you want, so they can mentor you and teach you, and you can get to know them and hang out with them, and they can inspire you, and you can learn from them, so you can become better yourself. It's something to think about. So if you have a question you want to ask me, go to my website, click the Contact Me tab, which will be on the left-hand side of your screen. Send me 1 to 2 paragraphs max, and just give me several weeks to get back to you with a response. If you want to talk to me right away, the quickest way to get my help is to book a paid phone coaching session. You can do that by going to my website, click the Products tab, which will be at the top of your screen, and just follow the instructions. If you want to get a digital version of my Kindle ebook, on my website, underneath the email sign-up box, is a box that has a link that will take you right to the Amazon Kindle download page for my book. Once you get there, if you don't have a Kindle device, just download one of their free e-reader apps for whatever electronic device you want to read my book on. And if you appreciate the value of the information I offer in these video newsletters, the articles on my website, or my ebook, you can show your appreciation right now by going to my website, and on the Wibia toolbar at the bottom of your screen, click the PayPal donate button and donate any amount that you feel is equal to the value of the information. And I will talk to you soon.